TRS COP26 podcast. This one is titled Growing Sustainable Behaviour Through Grassroots, and it's the Green Path Project. And I'm joined by Sarah today. So, Sarah, I'm going to hand over to you just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me. So I work at a company called Vaultex. So you'll be forgiven if you haven't heard of us. We are quite, we're not exactly a household name, although we are kind of ticking away in the background. So what we basically do is we look after the UK's cash cycle. So what that means is when you pay for something with cash, it's likely that that will end up at some point in its life at a Vaultex cash centre. And what we'll do with it is we will filter through the cash. We'll make sure that it isn't dirty, it isn't counterfeit, it isn't damaged. And if it is, then we'll take that money out of circulation, we'll send it back to the Royal Mint or the Bank of England, and then it will be destroyed. So basically what that's doing is making sure that when you get cash in your hand, you know that that is real and you can use it, and you know it's fit for purpose. We've also been involved in things like when the Bank of England has printed its new polymer notes, we'll push that out into circulation. So whilst it's the Bank of England who get the kind of credit for that, it's us ticking away in the background. So it's quite often that obviously that's quite a high security organisation. We are one of those companies that you don't hear a lot about, and that culturally means that until recently we haven't really shouted about what it is that we're doing and what we're proud of. And to work for Vaultex once was a very secretive thing, but now thankfully it's not, and we're able to talk about that and we're able to take pride in the things that we do. And part of that is sharing our sustainability strategy and the things that we're doing to combat climate change, the things that we're doing in our communities as well. So my role is, as head of culture and CSR, is to oversee that. So I oversee corporate social responsibility, and that's everything from recycling to going into schools and adding value in that way in terms of employability, to fundraising. It's also employee engagement and internal communications. So quite a wide remit, but I absolutely loved it. I've been at Vaultex for 7 years now. So yeah, quite a big role.
That's brilliant, and thanks for the explanation there about what they do. So we're here today to talk about the grassroots. So the first question is, why do you feel grassroots change is so important for business?
Honestly, this is one of these topics that you'll just never shut me up on. The first thing is, I think it's a basic right. I think it's everybody's basic right to be listened to and feel respected and understood. And knowing you've been heard at work is just a fundamental part of that. It just makes business sense. So in terms of retaining your staff, expanding your customer base, working business to business, it's becoming more and more important for companies to show their value in terms of morals, ethical conduct. There's also a raft of research that generally comes out of marketing around, you'll have heard that, you know, baby boomers, millennials, Gen Z, what they value at work. And more that research is showing that people are choosing to stay with companies who genuinely value sustainability and value their employees' opinion. And that employee voice is increasingly important. It should be leveraged. And as well, I can drive this strategy. I can put in place things that I know we need to do as a business, and you know, I can look at that objectively, but I am never going to, as much as I try, I'm never going to understand the nuances of the processes and the things that truly need to change and how to change them, as well as that person, for want of a better phrase, who's on the shop floor doing it every day. So I want to make sure that knowledge is harnessed and, yes, respected and being bubbled up through the organisation to a level where that meaningful change can happen. And also, there's never been a better time for us. We are aligning everything we do with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, as many organisations are. And we're working at an industry level. So it's a time where people are starting tentatively to bring those competitive barriers down at an organisational level and say, okay, yes, normally we are competitors, but how do we work together as an industry to kind of achieve these things for the sustainability of the planet and of ourselves and our communities? So how incredible is that then, to be an employee and have your idea that was just a germ of an idea that goes up through the echelons of the organisation, it ends up going into industry. How incredible is that, to retain your staff and make, get that passion that's throughout everybody at the moment to make the world a better and more sustainable place, to be like, oh my God, that was my idea. And not only have I've kind of contributed to this Green Path idea that we've been doing, but all these other companies are doing it now. It just shows that you can make a difference, and companies need to be open, in my mind, to making sure that they are leveraging everybody's knowledge and experience in their organisation, because ultimately you're missing a trick if you're not, in my opinion.
I totally agree with you, Sarah. You've hit on some really good points there. So I always bang my drum about authentic voices and making sure that they're heard. That part about collaboration and sharing that best practice as well if you're doing something. So, and you're doing that today.
You just said it there. I said it, genuine and authentic. So no matter what you do, you can do the smallest thing. As long as it's genuine and authentic and your people can see that, and they can see that they can be involved throughout the process, good or bad, as long as it's genuine and authentic and it's not perceived to be any kind of tick box or any kind of, we're doing this because we think we should, that's what's important. So it's not about the grandest gestures and the biggest amounts saved or whatever. It's about the authenticity of that. I'll climb down off my horse now.
No, it's great. So tell us a bit more about the Green Path and how that came about.
Yeah, so previously, so our CSR strategy has grown very quickly. So I kind of inherited it in 2015, and we were very much at that point focused on altruism, so the charity side of it, just fundraising, which obviously very good stuff, but it was kind of quite linear. And we grew quite fast. So there were some really big ticket things that we could do in terms of improving our environment and our impact on the environment. Things like installing occupancy lighting, a building energy management system to identify where we could lower consumption. These big kind of things we knew we haven't done them, we need to do them, let's get them done, let's invest. And we did all those, and we found we got to a point where we kind of plateaued. We felt like we made so much progress so fast, and then in terms of environmental impact, it's like, okay, what do we do now? And everything seemed quite small, and we were like, well, is that worth doing because it's so small? Going back to what I said before, absolutely yes. But then how do we prioritize those things? So Green Path was a competition. It was for anybody at Vaultex to put forward ideas, and those ideas were under 3 categories. So it was land, energy, or plastic. So have an idea within those 3. You can submit as many entries as you want, and And then the ones that we take away to investigate further will get a prize. So I think we did £100 spot prize at that point, which is like vouchers that they could choose which retailers to go to. And then if your idea gets implemented, then you get a day's holiday as well. And holiday is like just gold dust at Vaultex. Like, everybody wants extra holidays, so there's a competition they're going to get in there. And that was basically just to see, you know, how are those people on the shop floor experiencing sustainability? What is it that they want to change? Because you've always got those things at work. You think, oh, why do they do it like that? And you know, it just seems so obvious to you, but no one's kind of got hold of it and ran with it. So we had hundreds of entries. Honestly, it was amazing. But the funny thing was that everybody was saying the same kinds of things, which was really interesting, because it's like, okay, so it seems so obvious to these people that we should have done that. And that is just something I would never have thought of. So we had such a good response from it that this was in 2019. It's just kept running. It's just one of those things where we keep reminding people, have you got any more ideas? What do you think about this? We've just implemented that, but is that working okay? Would you change it anymore? And it's become this continuous loop of a feedback, basically, and implementation. And also the best thing about it is to get people excited about what they can do as part of Vaultex. So we always had things where we'd listen to employee voice and implement on the back of it, but somehow that this is different in that people are just that much more engaged with it because they can see where their idea can go. So it's been really special.
That's amazing. It's good to hear as well that people, it's such a kind of simple idea, but the engagement and the kind of basically ideas and stuff that has come from that sounds brilliant. This approach might be completely new to some organisations. So where do you start with embedding these sustainable behaviours if that isn't part of already your organisation culture?
So I think timing is incredibly important. So you have to make sure that the people within the organisation are ready. And what I mean by that is, so if I use Vaultex as an example, there was a time when we probably wouldn't have been ready for this kind of intervention, because people wouldn't have believed that they would be listened to and their ideas would have been taken on board. Thankfully, a long time ago now. But so you probably wouldn't have got as much kind of as much response. But that doesn't mean that you don't do it. I think it just means you do it on a much smaller scale. So if I was going to start doing that rather than launch to the whole organisation, I'd probably do it in one site, or I'd do it in one team, and I'd then use that as a quick win. I'd then show the rest of the organisation, look what we did here. We asked this team or this site what they would change in their site in order to be more sustainable, and this is what we did. And show the success of that, show this is how much plastic we saved, or, you know, even if it's something as simple as we've put a little common area in this site and it's got a little garden outside, and isn't it nice to go and sit outside, and we're encouraging the wildlife. Just little things like that. That was a green path idea, you know, put more of a green area within our sites. And then show how you're listening to people, show how the success has happened, and then say, now we want to do it on a little bit of a wider scale. So it's just kind of baby steps, and just showing that success and showing that you'll follow it through, and also showing that you're involving people from the get-go. So it's not just you have an idea and then it goes away and suddenly it's implemented and you've not been part of that process. Showing that you're involving people on that journey so that they're gaining the skills that they that are available for that as well. So they're getting more out of it than even just seeing their idea implemented. They're getting so much more. The other thing I'd probably say is, probably sounds a bit backwards when we're talking about grassroots, but you need that buy-in from the top. So again, 5-6 years ago, CSR was, being perfectly candid with you, it was probably a little bit of a tick box. It was just the charity stuff. But then very quickly came the realisation that it needed to be holistic. It needed to be indicative of all our stakeholder wants and needs in order to be worth doing at all. And we were so lucky in that our execs understood that. They understood the merit of it. They understood how this not only helps in terms of a business sense, but our employees, our customers, suppliers, everything. It all ties down into our company values, which underpin those our CSR pillars. So understanding at the top means that that everybody in the organisation will be far more willing to work towards these goals. And then from those goals, you align them into the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And then it's like, you know, it all needs to knit together in order for grassroots to work. Because the worst thing that you can do is start your grassroots, find it gets to a certain point in the organisation and it just won't get any further. And because that can be demoralising for anybody, can't it? So yeah, buying from the top, and then just assess where your culture is, how ready are people for this, and just then understanding what scale you can do it on, I think would be my advice.
Some great tips there, Sarah. Thank you so much. And then one question. You might have covered this a little bit actually in the last one, but if someone's listening to this and wanted to do something similar, what would your key takeaways be from the Green Path experience?
So, yeah, aside from what I've already said, I think the involvement of the people who have had the ideas all the way through is one key thing, because and that's good or bad, because these things aren't easy. So I wouldn't expect, don't go away thinking, well, yes, there's that idea and we just have to implement that, because sometimes you get so far down the road and you realise actually that can't work. Vaultex are obviously we've talked about our security. We're very strictly governed, and rightly so. We have to be for the nature of what we do. But that means that there are things that we just can't do because of the processes that are in place. But the key thing in that is, because the people who had the idea were involved from start to finish, they fully understood why that idea stalled. And then instead of it, your people might surprise you, is one of the key takeaways. Instead of being defeated by that, being demoralised, sort of a different way around it. It's like, okay, we can't do that. So how would I adapt my idea to make it something that Vaultex can do and still have that genuine impact, and that and that really helps, because then you aren't taking an idea, running with it, and then feeding back that actually the answer is no. You're feeding back the answer is no, but this is why. What do you think of that? And how would you adapt? Because this is your baby in a way. You've done this day to day. How do you think we can get around that, or how do you think we can adapt it? And that's again been development for that person. It's been development for our CSR strategy. There's just so much value in the process of doing that. So yeah, involvement, and also not being afraid to take this to the next level as well. So you might run a project like Green Path and have amazing success internally that you can celebrate. You can, you should, but then where does it go then? Do you have the contacts within the industry to share that? Because at this moment in time now, we've got COP26. This is what this is all about. Collaboration is so important right now. Just kind of dropping those guards and being open to speak to people within the industry and say, we've done this, we're aware you've got similar processes, you might want to do it as well. It's saved us this amount of plastic, it's saved us this in carbon emissions. Being able to mirror that practice and hold it up as this is best practice. Don't be afraid to say, I think we've got best practice in our industry here. Do you want some of it, basically? Because we're all working towards these same the SDGs, we're all working towards those same goals. And we've seen how collaboration can generate such meaningful change already. And I think that's something that should continue. So another key takeaway is just be proud of what you've done and share.
Couldn't agree more. And that's exactly what you've done here today, Sarah. So I just want to end with a massive thank you for your time today and for sharing all about the Green Paths. Thank you.
Thank you.